Thank you so much for watching and listening to my show, William Wallace for America. Of course, I say it both ways because if you're watching it on Rumble, you can catch it on a podcast and vice versa. Please visit my site, williamwallace.net. Also, please check out some of my sponsors like Bond Arms, Patriot Mobile, and even My Pill. If you go on my site, you get those affiliate link codes. And with me today is someone, and I always tell you, I'm always looking for people that are finding ways to improve America, that promote and love freedom. And with me today is just such one of those individuals. I'm going to say his name the English way, but I'm going to let him pronounce it the other way. I can't even say the other way, let alone your last name, Steve Slepcevic. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm good. And the last name in Serbian is Slepcevic. So I'm sure the NBA and also the Olympics had a challenging time, announcing some of these last name, Bogdanovic, Jokic, all that other stuff. So yeah.
You said that's the Slavic name way you say it, right?
Yeah, it's a Slavic pronunciation of it. Yes.
Are you from there? Or is your family from there?
My family's from there. I was the first one born in the States. Learned English when I went to kindergarten. So my parents actually immigrated into the country illegally. And then over 15, 16 years became legal citizens. Yes. So it's quite interesting.
They came here illegally and then became legal citizens.
Correct.
I love this. All right. So do you hear stories from them about what it was like, what freedom was like in their in their home country where they're from? Do you hear stories about anything they went through? Because judging by your young age, they may have been, after some wars or something. I'm just kind of making assumptions here.
Yeah. I mean, look, my father's, all his uncles were killed Orthodox Christmas Eve at the dinner table by the Ustaše, which were the Croatians that joined the Nazi forces during World War II. Because the place that they lived in was on the border of Serbia and Croatia. So him witnessing that, their family escaping from that into Sremska Mitrovica and raising their family in a small village called Šašinci. My father converted from being Orthodox Christian to being Nazarene Christian. And as a result of it, when he turned 18, in Serbia, you're required to serve 2 years mandatory military duty. And so he refused to take a gun, swear to king or country that he would kill another man on behalf of the country. And so he was sentenced to 7 years in prison. And that prison is hard time for refusing to take a gun because of his Christian faith. After 7 years, he actually became the best mechanic for them, fixing the tanks, the Jeeps, the military hardware. He got out, he was out for 30 days, and they resentenced him to another 7 years. In a communist socialist government, you have no rights. And so when he got resentenced for the next 7 years, he escaped with two of his friends in Austria, sought asylum there, was granted asylum, and then made his way on a visitor's visa to Canada, where he extended his visitor visa, and then eventually went from there to the United States through Detroit, across the bridge with my mom. Now, it's interesting because my mom, he didn't meet her in Canada. He went to go visit a friend of his that was in Canada that was married to my mom's sister. And so he started writing postcards back and forth, letters to my mom in Serbia. And after 3 years was able to get papers. He proposed to her through a letter before he ever met her. And when she landed in Toronto, Canada, they later got married in Toronto and then escaped from Canada with twins into Detroit. I was born in Ohio. My other sister was born in New York. And then after a couple of cold winters, my father said, I can't stand this. He moved to California. I was about 1.5 years. And so we grew up in a really rough neighborhood of LA. And if you know, the 70s and 80s in LA, in the inner cities was a rough time. But my parents raised us in a very strong, grounded Christian morals. And everything was organic. My parents were organic before organic was cool. Everything we grew on our own land in the backyard in the hood. We had pigs, goats, ducks, chickens. We were the urban farmers that people just looked at us as strange. I remember my sisters walking the goat around the block, and the kids are like, damn, what kind of dog is that? And my sister's like, that ain't no dog. And they're like, That ain't no dog. What kind of dog? I ain't no dog. I said, no, man, it's a goat. Man, I ain't never seen a goat. That's a goat. you know. Um, my dad was we got our house vandalized. We had all kinds of drama that happened in the hood. That was just a rough time. The Bloods and the Crips ran the streets, a lot of gang banging. Every night the ghetto bird was up. But my father was 6'2". He beat the shit out of them. The different people that try to, and then eventually everybody knew not to walk on our side of the street. They're like, just stay away from that Serb. And it was kind of like created a sense of a protector family nation in our neighborhood, that's an area you don't want to go into. And so it was an interesting time, an interesting time. I was grateful for all the beautiful.
This while I'm bringing you on to interview you about some organizations that you're working on that pertain more to current events and things that are going on that I think people are going to find really interesting. At the same time, I'm loving learning this about you because I really think it sets the stage for why you believe in individual freedom so much and how that ties into the organizations that you're working with right now. I believe that this proves that freedom and the things that you're working on that promote individual freedom are basically have been interwoven in your DNA, genetically speaking. Although I did a show about a year ago on how I think that freedom runs in our DNA. I think that the freedom is something that we're born, something that's genetic. And for you, it's even stronger because your father experienced a loss of freedom because of a communist dictatorship. But I have a question for you on that before we continue. You talked, so your father would not take up arms for a country or a king because of his Christian faith. But do you think it was more because of his faith, or did he know in his mind that a communist country was not someone who he would pick up an arm for? I mean, because many Christians today in America, if our country went to war, would pick up guns to fight for America because we believe that America is a gift, to humanity from God, and that our rights are endowed by our Creator, and our Constitution here in America is one that was inspired by God, and I guess put into a contract from our founding fathers.
Yeah,
But so, do
yeah.
you think that your father just kind of knew that it's not worth, I guess, maybe putting his faith on the line because it's a communist country?
Yeah, so I agree. That's exactly, it's the latter part of it, right? My father's, all their uncles, that whole family were the Chetniks fighting against the communist government. They were the ones that were there assisting in the rescue of the downed U.S. airmen that were fighting in World War II and hiding and sheltering them, which is known as the greatest rescue mission, also the Forgotten 500, the Halyard mission that was run by the OSS. So if your viewers wanted to get a little history, it was kept out of our history books for 53 years. But the Serbs were instrumental as US's greatest ally in World War I and World War II. And it's Halyard, Halyard Foundation. And I'm a board member of that for the fact that this is kind of in my DNA and where my family comes from. And the ultimate price they paid was with their lives. What I learned from my parents coming here was they escaped the communist country. This is a place that they were able to practice their freedom of religion, their Christianity, to worship God. Over there, if they were caught in a house worshiping, they'd burn the house with the parishioners in it. So everything was underground. It was all that's what you're seeing happening in Iran now, right? The Christians are underground. You see the same things happening in China. The Christians are underground. They're getting persecuted. You're getting this type of stuff all over the world. But what I learned in this process is my parents raised me not to hate another culture. As a matter of fact, I learned German in school. My father encouraged me, yet they were part of what took his family out, right? My dad had every color and race that you can possibly imagine work for him. I remember him getting in arguments with his friends when I was 9, 10 years old and really getting heated, that never in the hearing distance of his son, which was me at the time, I don't want to hear that shit spewing out of your mouth that I have a Croatian doctor, or that I have a Muslim employee, or that this black man who is at a Long Beach where his shop was at the time, they're the ones who robbed his shop. He says, that's not the one that robbed the shop. It was another man. So he never referenced color, religion, any of that type of stuff. As a matter of fact, if I go to a Balkan restaurant I could sit down in that Balkan restaurant in the United States next to a Bosniak, okay, an Albanian, a Croatian, and we can all have laughs, eat the same exact food, speak in our own native language, with some have a little slightly different dialects, and have a great conversation over some cevape and some rakia, right? But if we were to go back to those countries of where we come from, we're supposed to hate each other and kill each other. And so the sadness of what I'm seeing happen in America is the same rules and games that have been played in those foreign countries are being played in America by dividing, separating people by race, by culture. And that is the biggest mistake. And when people ask me, you got the Republicans, you got the Democrats, you got Trump, you got Kamala, you got, all these two sides issues going on. I'm going, you guys are in an ecosystem. You guys are missing it. And you guys are going through the same perpetual thing all over again. The left and the right. And again, this may offend some of your viewers, right? But the truth is the truth. You may be on the left, that group may be on the right, but you're on the same train going to the same station, still run by the globalists. America, what I learned from Geneva and just doing my research with the World Health Organization, the UN, CERN, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Bill Gates building, seeing the migration building, seeing all these things in a place called Geneva, it showed me clearly that America is one little seat at the table of the UN that's run by the globalists in this so-called sovereign, neutral Switzerland. Why have they been called neutral and sovereign? Why? Because they don't want you shooting bombs at them or taking out the elites of where they live. That is where the global control is coming from. And I find America in this time and age, it's we the people have to start changing how things are run. And I think one of the biggest things that I learned during COVID is I saw firsthand the Serbian government come out immediately when COVID came out, and I saw President Trump come out. Okay. Serbian president came out and said, we're not shutting the country down. Wives, mothers, grandmothers, you've taken great care of your husbands and your families. We're counting on you to do the same. We're getting pressure from the West. And furthermore, we can't afford to. Now, some mayor stepped out in Serbia and decided he was going to go against the government. He wanted to shut the place down. But I tell you, when those 80-something officers showed up to install the curfew, about 100-something not parishioners, but people that were in the cafes. And if you know Serbs, they like to smoke their cigarettes in the little kafana. They're enjoying their music, they're enjoying their food, a little bit of dancing. You don't want to disrupt that. That's a 4-hour ordeal sitting on a patio at a restaurant. The restaurant owners and the parishioners came out and stripped the shirts and the gun belts from these officers. And you could see them yelling in the street going, you know what? I know where you live. And you can come back out tomorrow night. No problem. But if you come out tomorrow night, I promise you I'm coming to your house. I'm taking your couch, your TV, and your car. You want to come take from me? I'm going to come take from you. And instantly got shut down. When the insurrection happened, the so-called insurrection, I'm going to call it like it is. I was there for January 5th and 6th. I saw the entire thing play out. There's about 33 of our paramedics that were there. There's a huge group of us on there. I was doing some security and board up services. Well, out there on the 5th was like a great revival. On the 6th, beautiful event. You could see, as far as the people can see, there was a sea of people. People were even climbing into the trees. You could see them that was surrounding the area to be able to see Trump speak. There was two areas. There was the center part that had like a core group of people. Then there was a moat, a defensive moat that was created around, a huge separation, and then the masses of people behind that. And what was interesting was how the different media showed different angles. Greece, who tends to lean towards the liberal side of it, was showing just the inner moat, like the small rally. Serbia, who leans towards the Republican side because not Biden, but Bill Clinton, alongside NATO, bombed a Christian nation in the 90s to set up a military base in Kosovo because Serbia wouldn't allow that. And so Serbia showed the entire span. But one thing I can tell you is most Americans have not been to the Ukraine. They don't know where Kiev is. They didn't know where Kiev is until somebody told them. Nobody, in a very small group of people, know what the Balkan Wars were even about. Oh, they want to say Milosevic created all these ethnic cleansing and killed all these people. The guilty parties were on both sides. On both sides of what the way they battled, the way they battled. Both sides ended up with their war criminals being tried by the Hague. Right? So when people don't know the whole story and don't know what internally is going on there, and they're simply watching Fox News, MSNBC, or they're Googling it, or they're getting some stuff from certain independent media, unless you're there on the ground seeing firsthand what's going on, your story is going to be skewed, because the US has the biggest propaganda machine. And so I thank God that I've had the opportunity, when the border crisis started, to get called out by some friends who are good friends of mine that are on the border tech unit, and the border sheriffs go, hey, we have a serious problem, Stephen. I know you have a very specialized drone team. Could you help us out? Because there's some areas we can't get to fast enough, or we can't set up surveillance in these areas. We don't know if there's drug traffickers, child trafficking going on in these areas, in these corridors, because they're up in the high mountains of Cochise County, or these areas that are where the Normandy wall's at. We don't have the manpower in our drone team. Every time there's either a cloud in the sky, or we have a large group being apprehension, the drone team's not able to fly. They're busy processing. So that initial start, I'm like, yeah, let's go out there and do it. And I'm telling you, over the last 3.5 years, the amount of apprehensions, the amount of goodwill, the amount of service, the way that we taught these border sheriffs, border patrol, and the drone teams of how to use their systems much more effectively, it's been completely game changing. But it's such a massive flood that you could set up a little dam and that river's still running around you, you know?
This is
So
this is amazing. Some of the things that you're working on. That's I'm letting my listeners hear what you're working on. But I do want to go backwards for just a second, and for and get for a minute on this. So I love the story about why I think it looks like how freedom, the seed of freedom, that was in your DNA, just sprouted. After you're raised in a great family. I love the fact that your dad proposed your mother before he actually met her. I mean, that just doesn't happen today. I mean, you see somebody on social media now, you at least get an idea what they might look like. They might be different when they show up at your door, but your dad did it sight unseen, which is quite amazing. But that's a whole other story. So, and I always talk about how work ethic, which, your father obviously had a good work ethic, is something is crucial to a family. Your work ethic not only holds a family together, but it teaches a family morals. It teaches them how to work together. It teaches them how to work with a community, and in many cases, that work ethic nurtures that freedom in your DNA. So, at what point did that sprout and blossom to get you motivated to do a lot of things that you're working on now? I know you're involved in several organizations, several things that all involve freedom to some extent, and they all are doing things to not only improve certain aspects of our community, but they're gonna, I believe, be something that helps solve problems in America. What started those, or what made you start these organizations and get involved? Could you tell us about the main things that you're working on? And then as we put all that into the funnel, we're going to start really focusing on the road to Geneva and the who. So what are the organizations that you were inspired to start and get involved with that have kind of led you to where you are now?
So, I mean, it really comes back to my father. My father always taught us that there's no such thing as impossible. I learned at a very young age, you have to simply create a clear intention. I also saw the pain when my parents talked about what the communism was like, right? And my father passed away when I was 23. My mom's still alive. She's 88 years old,
Wow.
running, traveling, working. She's got her own garden, and she's never given up her faith. Her faith is still the way that she accepted Christ. She still wears a head covering. She's got no TV in her house to this day. She doesn't watch the news. She is just as clean, living, and organic as humanly possible. And I can tell you, her exact words when COVID rolled in and these changes started happening. She goes, son, CNN, which is son, this is what it feels like when communism moves in. This is the beginning of it. I lived it. I knew how it came into our country. And this is the beginning. So the organizations that I've been part of is I've worked with General Flynn closely. I've worked with Charlie Kirk on the border battles. There's a 6-part docuseries called Border Battles that we put out with Turning Point. I took Bobby Kennedy to the border. So if you go and you watch Midnight at the Border, it's a 20-minute reel. He did 3 nights, night ops, 4 days, interviews back to back. I'm also part of, I was part of the organization group with Defeat the Mandates. So we're the ones that assisted and put my team together of all the firefighters that you saw that stood on the Capitol, not the Capitol, the Lincoln Memorial during the Defeat the Mandates. We also did it down in Los Angeles with Sam Eaton and John Knox, Firefighters for Freedom. Worked closely with Bravest for Choice, where that was the other firefighter organization out of New York. And then the Inspired Network, which was with Susie and Dr. Nazarenko, Dr. Asim, Brett Weinstein, that was in Geneva, that organization. And that was an incredible, we'll dive into the whatever portion you want to dive into. And now we're planning for a massive event, September 27th, with some forums and some special legislative stuff. And then on the 29th, there's going to be a massive rally in DC, and it's called Rescue the West, rescuethewest.com. I'm not going to talk much about it because there's a lot of stuff being announced on Monday. So I'm just giving you kind of a little teaser. But if you go there and you follow it, you're going to want to see what's being updated on Monday, Tuesday of next week. But that has got some amazing powerhouses. It's going to be one of the greatest rallies just before the election.
Is there a site for that?
Yeah, rescuethewest.com.
All right. I'll put that up there, here too, or www.res. I'm putting that in the banner right now. Rescuethewest.com.
Yep.
And there we go. That way they can find out. They can see on the video portion the website. So basically, all of this blossomed right after COVID. So before COVID, were you working on any of these organizations?
Yeah, I was part of a supporter in the children's health defense area. So 9 months before COVID hit the scene, the radars of everybody, we were fighting 2 bad bills in California, SB 276 and SB 277. And it was, if there is a pandemic declared, the only way your child could be exempt from it is if they had not had a severe reaction to that specific vaccine. Well, my son was vaccine injured. As you know, you've interviewed my wife, the warrior mom.
So real quick, those bills were before COVID?
9 months before COVID.
Is that amazing? That's a coincidence. A legislation about vaccines and being exempt were happening before COVID actually came out.
Yeah, and if I was a conspiracy theorist, I'd be like, well, that just seems too common to try and push and pass laws just before you release a virus or a pandemic. Everything's planned, right?
Right.
And so what I found interesting is thousands of parents. My wife turns over and she's like, I've never really seen myself as an activist. And I said, yeah, I know. Listen, I've been battling big insurance for years. As a matter of fact, if I see something wrong, I'm going to call it, and I'm not going to have any filters. And so I sued the Department of Insurance for fraud and collusion with the insurance companies that were actually not protecting the disaster victims, but protecting the insurance companies. And I've dealt with multiple hit pieces and smear campaigns. And at the end of the day, it just tells me that I'm over the target. Just tells me I'm over the target.
And what's interesting too is that having interviewed your wife, you all experienced firsthand, and we won't, people can listen to that if they want to look up that interview, Tracy Slepcevic, as it's pronounced the English way. is in my queue, and then go back and see what you all actually went through. But just kind of giving people the gist of it, your wife actually, your son actually, you watched him decline after many vaccinations, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Walking, talking, playing, everything normal. And then when he got his MMR, completely started to regress and started losing his speech, his motor functions, started having all types of neurological issues and stimming behaviors. And yeah. And if it wasn't for the road recovery with my son, um, and losing everything in the process of battling the insurance companies at that time, listen, I find this is the best thing that ever anything can ever happen. If you're going through tough times, thank God, be grateful, lean into it, embrace every part of it, because warriors aren't created sitting in the harbor. We see as human beings, we want it to be comfortable when I retire. I'll never retire. It's when my eyes open until my eyes closed. I'm going to battle everything I can. And the more God throws at me, bring it. As long as his heart's beating, I'm ready for the next battle. I'm ready for the next lesson. And I'm going to do it from a space of love, not from a space of anger, just from a simply space of love, because there's so much power in that, my friend.
I absolutely love that. So basically you're rolling through life. You've got freedom in your DNA, you got activism brewing. COVID comes along, it emerges, it blossoms, and you see some other bigger problems and problems. What are the main things that you're working on right now? Again, we're going down that funnel. We're getting to the road to Geneva here in just a second. That's through Inspired. But what are the main things that you're working on that you believe promote freedom in America?
So when you see what they did with COVID, the blessing that I had, I run a disaster management company. So we were doing a lot of the COVID protocols. I brought my virologist in, I brought my environmental consultant in. We were walking through the hospitals. One of my teams on Miami Beach were the first COVID team with the rescue, fire department rescue, that were actually going picking up patients. One of the patients they picked up actually was from Wuhan. This is ground zero at the beginning, came into Miami from Wuhan. My team, the friends of guys, not friends of mine, they're actually work with me on my team when they deploy hurricanes. They don't go with the fire department. They don't go with FEMA. They go on the private side for my critical infrastructure clients. They picked up the patients. They would take them to the hospital. They would give the patient some fluids, and then they let the patient go home in an Uber, in a car, or walk home, whatever. And there was no infectious controls put in place, as that the person had tuberculosis. The person wasn't on lockdown. So as soon as I saw that, it showed me it was a shit show. When I was in the assisted living facilities and I'm like, here's how we're going to set the protocols. And they're like, okay, well, what do we got to do? I said, what's the protocol? Well, we set up containment, neg air. Yes. Don't go with, are we taking in with air? No, we're not going with air. I said, well, then how deadly is this virus? So one doesn't match the other. What are we using for cleaning? Benefit, microban? Well, shit, that's the stuff we use on mold remediation. There's
Right.
nothing special here. As a matter of fact, I actually walked through Justin Bieber's house because he was afraid of the whole COVID part of it, put together a protocol for fogging. And the thing was, how long is it good for? Well, it's only good for the time that once the plastic comes down and whatever animal person walks in, the place is contaminated again. That's it. So you got to stop with the madness, but they controlled everything through fear. Now we're back at the same place. People are like, well, they're not going to do it again. They made billions,
Right.
and you went along with it. Even if a small
Right.
group goes along with it, they're going to continue going with it. And so,
Even and like to your point, there's not many Americans that are awake right now. Many are still. Look, I know people that are listen to this show and probably think that we're crazy nut conspiracy theorists. And I said, well, wait a minute. Are you going to deny that people, like you said, companies made billions off of this? I mean, we hear the stories of how hospitals were labeling deaths as COVID deaths. Somebody gets into a car accident, dies of a heart attack, and they label it a COVID death. If the person doesn't test positive for COVID, and who knows if they really did or not, it was a COVID death because they got paid for it. And we know these things are happening. We know that these mandates were ridiculous. And look, I always said, look, I don't necessarily believe the masks are 100%. Maybe they work a little bit. Either way, it should be a freedom thing. If somebody's afraid, the mask makes them feel better, so be it. The mandates is where I draw the line. You get ready
yeah,
to
and
say
if the
something.
person wants to wear a mask, I get it. That might be your placebo, right? But if you're going to wear a mask and you're not going to put actually eye protection on your eyes, knock it off. What kind of game are you playing? Are
Right.
you really protecting yourself? This right here is the biggest opening of moisture that goes right into your nasal passages. You ain't doing nothing with that mask. And at the end of the day, I always say it like this: don't hate the person, love the person, be kind to the person. People get so triggered by that. I'm like, hey, that's America. Let him wear a mask, embrace him. Don't judge him for it. He probably got psyoped, or he feels like this has this barrier. And sometimes they've gotten so comfortable of wearing that diaper on their face that's where they're at, and they're okay with that. And I'm okay with it. You know what? Live and let live. But I
Or
can
they're
tell
wearing the mask like this with the nose exposed. But that's a whole other thing we can laugh about. But it's almost kind of like vaccines. It's all that's it's a mask is analogous to the vaccines. It makes many people feel comfortable. They vaccinate their children with 90 vaccinations that are required now in some doctors' offices. Now they're getting the hepatitis vaccine when they're born, and we all know that form of hepatitis is only the way you can transmit it is through drugs, intravenous drugs, or sex. And I don't know any newborns that are having sex or having intravenous drugs. I mean, I know they get started early these days at it. That we know of. No pun intended. But the vaccinations make many people feel comfortable that they got their children vaccinated with the 80 vaccines that are now required and recommended. So
and people learn at a different point in time in their life. My mom didn't vaccinate us, right? I think I had one vaccine somehow. I was supposed to get another like 10 vaccines because they wouldn't let me back in school. I came home and my mom looked at me. I said, Mom, I got to get all these shots. I didn't, first of all, as a kid, I didn't want to get these shots, right? I'm like, they're not going to let me back in school. My mom goes, Sine, son, you go back to school and you tell the teachers, God make you perfect. You don't need poison in your body. And I said, Mom, that's not going to fly. I can't go back. They're not going to accept it. And so what I did is this kid was coming to school with his vaccine card. And I'll admit this. I took his card and I copied whatever doctor's initials he had on it. I checked the boxes and I turned my card in. So I think at 10 years old, I probably had the first fake vaccine card. On the flip side, I vaccinated my kids, even though my 4 sisters, like, don't vaccinate your kids. I'm like, I'm going to vaccinate my kids, right? My mom didn't know what she was talking about until my son got injured, until my eyes opened up. In 16 years of research in the pharma, the vaccine, what's in the stuff, and how this stuff triggers different responses in different people. And when people say COVID, I'm like, oh, so you're okay with living with myocarditis or taking the risk of having strokes or blood clots or having some other turbo cancers going on. So if you're okay with that, then go along with it. For a virus that's 99.9%, you're not going to have anything happen to it, but yet your natural immunity can kill it. Ivermectin can support you taking through that process. Vitamin D3, right? And get out in the sunshine. So we've heard about all this, right? Oh, this is about your health and safety. Yet every person in the health department looks like their death, warmed over. And then they close down the beaches. They close down the basketball courts, the skate parks. Let's keep everybody indoor. Order food. And don't go out in nature. Don't be a part of that. That's going to kill you. No, that's not going to kill you.
It's going to heal you.
Yeah. So look, here's my problem. I'm going to get right down to it. And this is where I feel that most Americans on the right, I love them dearly, are trying to give and willing to give Trump a hard pass. Warp speed. Oh, well, let's just forgive him for it. He didn't know. He was led. Wait a minute. But he gave Fauci a medal for it, right? Wait a minute. You're supposed to clean up the swamp, but you took donations directly from Big Pharma and you pushed the biggest pandemic, gene editing thing onto the market, and you allowed that. That's a hill to die on. You understand? That's a hill to die on. And then when people say to me, well, he learned, well, wait a minute. He spent hours in a meeting with doctors and key people that I know with all the intel, yet the head of his campaign is still funded by Gavi. These things are going to continue People have to start paying attention to what are the results. These are the things that are really, really, really important. And start making those changes and reaching him and staying close to Trump and putting people in his camp to educate him so that when this next thing rolls out, there's a hard no. So that's just where I'm at, you know? And for me, working in Trump's camp, working in Kennedy's camp, during the mandates, it was Kennedy that was on the steps with us in DC, fighting the mandates. And the person that's been fighting these big pharmaceuticals and big ag and the stuff that's the largest, most critical thing right now is the chronic disease in America.
So warp speed happened under Trump, and a lot of people did forget about that.
Yeah, I mean, he shut the country down, and billions of dollars got pushed up to the elites. A lot of the middle America businesses, small mom and pop shops, have gone out of business.
Does that make you not a Trump fan, or I know you might not want to admit that, or is it just something that you can neither say or deny that, or is it something that I'm not trying to put you on the spot with it, but it sounds to me like it's just a bone of contention, we'll say. What do you want to say about that?
Look, I've worked in Trump's camp and Kennedy's camp, right? And it is a big bone of contention, right? You print trillions of dollars under Trump and you put on the pandemic. A lot of that money goes to big pharma, big pharma, big pharma, big pharma. They get 500 billionaires were created during that time. Biden, same thing. He printed trillions of dollars. I think they're right neck to neck with how much money was spent under both administrations. Now we're headed for a financial collapse. You see what's happening with the BRICS and people pulling out.
Your internet was getting a little blurry there. You said, I know you said billions of people were made, or over 400 billionaires are added, and then you were talking about how like you said, back to what you were saying about trillions being spent under Trump and trillions being spent under Biden. Of course, I think, and I'm not defending Trump, I'm just giving information. It sounds to me, from what I've heard, that Trump's biggest mistake, and was his mistake, that he kept a lot of holdovers from previous administrations, which ended up costing him or helping him make a lot of very bad decisions. Now, ultimately, it was his presidency, but I wonder if he would make these same mistakes in a second term, whether it's doing something like a warp speed scenario, or whether it is spending the trillions of dollars. I'm not sure where you're going, if that's where you're going with that.
I don't listen. I'm the last person who's going to predict what Trump will do, in the next cycle. You ask me, I'd love to see Trump, and better yet, I'd love to see Kennedy actually in the presidency of the United States. I feel that with his role in fighting big pharma, fighting big ag, on the environmental side of it, but the bigger part of it is the chronic disease. Kennedy was the one that was standing on the steps with us during Defeat the Mandates, right? With all the frontline doctors.
Right.
Am I not forgiving? Absolutely, I'm forgiving. I love the Trump family. I do. I don't have any qualms about it at all. I mean, I was a huge MAGA supporter, I voted for him, and I just tell publicly, 2016 and 2020. People ask me where I'm at. I'm voting for Kennedy in 2024. People are like, well, there's no way he's going to win. I'm like, you know what? You may be surprised if you actually start paying attention to what he's talking about, instead of actually just being so caught up in the echo chamber. And the person who's getting censored the most is Kennedy. And when you see Trump and Kamala now, or Trump and Biden, why did they invite him to the debate stage? Right? So the Republican Party and the Democrat Party find him as an absolute threat, a bigger threat than Trump.
I love not only your honesty, but I truly not only appreciate your opinion, but I see the beauty in your opinion. And I will agree with you on a couple things. For instance, that I think that our enemy is not amongst us, the people. It's the far right and the far left that uses the narratives and the ideologies and even the swamp and the bureaucratic agencies to divide us all up into individual little compartments that are easier to control and manipulate in such a way that, like, you going back to your friends from all these different nations, that you can have coffee here, but if you go over there, you're fighting amongst each other. It's kind of that same analogy, but I love your point, how you're saying that you just kind of wish that the decisions would have been different, and you're pointing them out, not in a way to be condescending or critical, but in a way to say, hey, look, Trump, if you get back in office, these are the things that you thought you did wrong. Maybe you can not make those mistakes again. Is that somewhat of the truth too?
Absolutely. And what I would really love to see that if Trump gets back in office, he embraces the Kennedy group. And if Kennedy gets in the office, I know for a fact that he'll embrace the MAGA group. Why? Because many of us have worked in both camps. Even though I'm now in the Kennedy support part of it, I love my MAGA friends and I'm 100% behind them. But that's the beauty of it. It's called unity. It's called America, right? We have to fight for humanity at this point in time in our lives.
That's
The
right.
leadership ain't Trump going to save us. It's all the people around him. So let's flood the Trump camp and the Kennedy camp with those that are human, that are Americans, that love America. Do you follow?
So
And
I'll
that are not
absolutely
going to
follow.
allow the bullshit that's been going on to continue. Right? So people, listen, I come from a background. I wish more people had come from a foreign country to see how beautiful it is here. I remember how my father that was his dream, right? To come to America, right? Because America was a land of opportunity. He would take people to see his lemon trees, how lemon trees grew in California. And his favorite thing was to take any visitor that came in from Europe, especially Serbia, to Disneyland. Not for any other ride except for one ride that was his favorite ride in all of Disneyland. And it was called America the Beautiful by Circle Vision. And there's a YouTube video, if you see it, it was a whole center screen that they had filmed all across America. And that was it. He would go there for that. And I would just see the look on his face as a kid. I'm like, man, my dad's so proud to be American. Do you know what I mean? Yet he still hung on to his roots because he brought that from there. We were never on this system. He became the best mechanic for 2 different race teams, made a huge name for himself. My mom worked as a tailor, a seamstress in Serbia for doing wedding dresses and Italian suits, like men's suits. And she became one of the best tailors in LA, and had 2 really well-known tailors that worked under her that started their own line. So I was raised by 2 aggressive, go work, loving parents. They were just in the thick. It was them and the world, right? And they were so protective of me. I was the middle son and 4 sisters, but yet we all to this day, me and my 4 sisters, we all run our own companies. And this is coming from the hood where we sat 5 kids in a pinto. We had like $20, we'd get nickel a piece to sew these garments in the garage. We had a sweatshop going, full blown sweatshop. I'm not making this stuff up. But it was those hard work ethics that allowed us to say there's such great opportunity in this land of milk and honey on earth, right? That we have this huge opportunity. And so when I see what's happening, and my parents fought so hard to come here, I feel that it's my job to grab the baton and run it 10 times harder, right? And end the division, but bring people together, working for humanity, for love, right? To let's start getting back to regenerative soil, right? Let's start working against these big ags, these big insurance, these big pharma companies, and they're poisoning people. They're destroying the next generation. It's not
And
how God intended.
I'm loving this, how you've put your heart and your mind and your conscience and even stories from your past all on the line, to be able to, not only, it's something that's in you. This isn't something that just all of a sudden you woke up one day and said, doggone it, we're going to take this country back. This is something that's been brewing inside of you for a long time. So I know the road to Geneva is coming up, and we're going to talk about that here in just a minute. But what are your companies right now that I know we've got? I know you've alluded to some of them. Some of the things that you're working on right now that all cover some aspect of freedom. A little bit of a snippet of each of them, and then which one of those led you to the road to the Geneva?
Like I shared, all the stuff that we've done and led us on the road to Geneva, which was just a thought, and the brilliant minds of Dr. Andrea Nazarenko and Susie Colson. It started from just an idea of like, we need to reach across the pond, right? During the whole mandates, we had connected with the firefighters out of Australia that were fighting the Australian Firefighters Alliance. When we saw them standing up against the mandates, then we reached out and connected with the Japanese that were fighting against the mandates and against the pharmaceutical companies. And so we started bringing this whole international community from the UK, from Portugal, from Austria, from the Netherlands with the farmers, the Canadian truckers. And so what we decided was like, let's bring everybody together in the international community. We're going to go to Geneva, right at the doorstep where the broken chair is, in front of the UN, at the most critical time where the World Health Organization was adopting their pandemic treaty. The IHR amendments were being passed. Dr. Tedros was there from the World Health Organization, Bill Gates, all these 70-something, 140 countries were signing on to this pandemic treaty that if there is a next pandemic, the World Health Organization takes over complete control. The nations, the other nations give up sovereignty, and it's all controlled by the World Health Organization. So it started
when was this convention?
This happened not long ago. We were just there.
Right.
I don't have the exact date, but it's roadtogeneva.com. So that was led by a large group of lawyers who actually were handing out all the legal packages, notifying every person that was coming into the World Health Organization what their exposure was, how they're going to be held legally liable, and what actually is in the pandemic treaty, which really kind of threw a massive monkey wrench in the World Health Organization's passing the pandemic treaty as they had originally planned.
So we'll talk about that in a second. But there's going to be some people who might have heard of the WHO. They're acutely aware of the WHO. Maybe they think the WHO is, powerless. The WHO is this organization, but they're over there. They're not here. Who created the WHO? How powerful is it?
The World Health Organization is a globalist entity. It's like the World Economic Forum, and they all operate out of Geneva.
So it's basically just a bunch of people that got together and said, "Hey, we could create this think tank, air quote, or this organization, and we're going to be able to control other countries through their health, or or scare them with what's happening." Or maybe I'm kind of brainstorming out loud and kind of stammering a little bit on it, but is that the direction it went in? Do you think these are people who said, "Hey, this is a way to take control," or are they people that are truly concerned about our health in the world?
Well,
sarcastically said, by the way.
Yeah, the largest funder is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Then you have other funders like China, big funders in it. So when you see who the people, just simply follow the money. It is a group of globalists. It's an unelected body. So I'm just going to decide to create an organization. I'm going to get enough elites and money into it, and I'm going to get enough buy-in from other countries, and then I'm protected. Nobody elected me. It's completely like a separate business, and it is not there for the people's health. If you look at the pattern that it's done and how it's evolved, you will see exactly how that group and what its actually ultimate goals are. So the people that don't know about it, it's simple. Just start doing your research and start doing your research as to how they've operated and what they've rolled out. If you see what the World Health Organization's done in Africa and the amount of people that they've euthanized through their vaccine programs, um, it's sickening at a whole level.
Many people aren't going to believe you. They're going to say that that's a conspiracy, you know.
Now just look at it. Certain countries that actually banned the World Health Organization from coming in, and there's multiple countries that have an arrest warrant out for Bill Gates. So he knows that he can't even go into those countries. Yeah.
So there are people in other countries that are even more conspiratorial, more right wing, more alert on this than we are, right? I'm saying that jokingly.
Yeah.
I'm being a little sarcastic, of course, but you know because there's be people who listen to this who say, "Oh, that's that far right wing conspiracy mind and stuff again." But there's people in other countries who are even more awake to what's going on with the WHO than we are in America. Is that correct? If they're banning Bill Gates,
Yeah.
then they're very awake.
Yeah. And
Not
their
woke.
vaccine
They're
programs.
not
Well,
woke. They're awake.
yeah, it's real simple. It's not a conspiracy. The results of the body count after the vaccine program rolled out doesn't lie. Results don't lie. So it's not a conspiracy. And people love to just kind of, let's throw it a conspiracy thing and wash it out, right? Just throw it out there. Like, I'm just going to ignore it. Well, keep ignoring it. Keep sticking your head in the sand and keep taking your next booster, because I promise you, eventually you'll beat COVID. You'll be cold as a slab, but you'll beat it. I assure you of that, right? Or any other type of process. If you don't do your due diligence and actually start to pay attention to what's going on in other countries, and people go, why this, right? What we learned in this process is the reason we put the whole international community together, because when they rolled it out globally, but we were in communication with other groups in those countries and saw these pockets of how it was being rolled out. And so we were all sharing information kind of on the underground, right? Where, oh, they're pulling this and they're pushing that and they're doing that. Why are they doing this to farmers? Why are they doing that with the French farmers? Why are they doing the Netherlands? Why are they doing this with the Canadian truckers? What's going on with big ag controlling the land and Bill Gates buying up all this land in the US? What is the big play? So when you start paying attention to what's going on, talk to the local farmers, get on the ground. The answers are there. It was no different than when COVID happened. I went to the hospital because that was part of my business. I went to the assisted living facilities. That's my business. When I'm the guy traveling on the plane and I'm getting all this hate coming from people like, you're killing people. You should put a mask on. This, that. I'm like, whoa, I'm me and maybe two other people on this plane. And maybe I have information you don't have. But I didn't spend time. I can't correct everybody. Speak out, sound off. This is America, right? But I'm going to keep doing me.
I love this. So if I have you for a few more minutes, this is getting really interesting because we're just getting so the road to Geneva started with an organization called Inspired. Is that correct? Where you all pulled the international community together and said, hey, we're aware that there's a lot of other organizations like ones here in America that are enlightening people with the truth about not just the COVID vaccine, but vaccines in general, and how how organizations in America are controlling people through health scares. And let's just make that a blanket statement, whether it's vaccines for children or COVID vaccine. You all found other people around the world that felt like they were being manipulated, whether it's vaccines, whether it's farmland, the farmers, or whatever. And you pulled these people together, and you got like-minded people together, and you all pooled your resources and your knowledge, and you got real educated on what the WHO was doing, which is how you all found out that they're basically, unelected people, unelected bureaucratic agency, if you call it that way, people who want to basically throw their beliefs and ideologies on citizens around the world that do not have the money or power that they have and are able to accumulate and pool together with the World Health Organization. And I'm kind of giving a little bit of an intro on this. I'm not leading you to an answer or I'm leading you to a question, which is, when you all got together, what did you all find? Well, first off, yes or no, did the World Health Organization sign this treaty together?
They went through all types of major changes and removed the sovereignty part of the control and pushed it back down to the nations because they couldn't get enough signatures. So it was a great, great success. But I'm telling you, if there's only one thing that I think all Americans need to remember is that I'm only responsible for the real estate in my shoes. Okay. But if I'm willing to take a stand step into the unknown, you'll never know how many other spirit beings feel the same, are going to show up at the same place. There was thousands of us that showed up at that square. We had no idea. When you saw the truckers convoys coming out of the UK, the convoys coming out of Portugal, the fact that the Canadian truckers brought their flag down, the firefighters from throughout the United States got on planes, flew to Geneva. When Del Bigtree last minute goes, I got to be there. When all of us were in the streets, and there was thousands of us, and the people that led the whole rally, after all the speakers, there was a massive parade that went through all the downtown streets of Geneva. The gentlemen, the families came down from the mountains of Geneva. And if you know anything about the cowbells in Geneva, they carry these big kind of things, these wooden things that have these two massive bells. The bells are like, the whole thing weighs maybe 50 to 75 pounds, maybe 100 pounds. These things are heavy. They're big brass things. And when they led the march and they're banging those big bells and they're walking with their Swiss scarves on with the white and then the embroidery on it, these are the people of the land. When they came from the hills into the center of Geneva, it got everybody's attention at the UN, at the World Health Organization, at the World Economic Forum, that, oh my God, for the first time in the belly of the beast at a very critical time, where do these people come from? It shows what's possible when people choose to show up and stand up. You don't have to know who or why. And it goes back to right from the very beginning when we started this interview, set the clear intention. Because I promise you, where America's headed, we have a lot of enemies. And it's going to be every single American willing to show up, lock arms, in unity, not divided. You have pink hair, I have dark hair, right? You want to wear
I got no hair.
shirt?
I got no hair.
You want to wear an anti-gun shirt? That's your choice. Or I want a pro-Second Amendment shirt. Great. I don't care what color, what religion. America needs to come together for the greater good for our future generations. And that's where we went from there, from Geneva, which was called the Road to Geneva. And at that event, we announced, we will see you at Rescue the West of our Western values, of protecting Western values. And that is going to be on a scale that has never been done before. And everybody and anybody on September 29th, mark your calendars, be in DC, because of how it's being announced, what's being announced up until that point is going to be a really critical time for freedom-loving Americans.
And what I like about this is it doesn't sound like it's while it's political in nature, it sounds like you're bringing people together that say, look, this isn't about the support of any president, person, candidate, whatever. This is about supporting freedom of the individual in the world, not just America. I mean, I always like to talk about freedom in America, but I'm going to ask you a couple questions here when we wrap up here in just a few minutes, about freedom in America. But it is about the freedom of the individual. It's about bringing people together for the power of the individual spirit to be able to prosper in this world and not be controlled by an organization or people just because they have money and ideologies that they want to push on us. But real quick, I like how you said for those who don't know about what the WHO was doing, the WHO was basically trying to have nations, and I'm kind of offering information before I ask the question, and correct me if I'm wrong, please. But in this treaty that the WHO was trying to sign, they were at first trying to take away nations' sovereignty with this treaty they were signing. So the power of all of you showing up is probably part of the reason why they were not able to get enough countries to sign to give away their sovereignty. But what was in that treaty that you can share that should scare people or would scare people if they knew what was in that treaty that might make them go, wait a minute, maybe I do need to learn more about the WHO? What was in it that you can rattle off to us?
So if you look at how it was structured, basically the World Health Organization would have complete sovereignty and dictate how the rollout of the next vaccine or next pandemic would be. That is part of the digital vaccine passport. That is going to control all your money, all your vaccine, your health status, whether you're free to move or not. This is the next step. If allowed to move through as they're going through, you're not going to get on a plane. There'll be a social credit score. All the things that you people call conspiracy theories will become a reality, right? You slowly do it. And when people say, hey, they lost that fight, I want to remind people, there's billions and billions and billions of dollars funneled into those organizations. They didn't lose anything. We just bought ourselves some more time. That's it. A little bit of time. They're back at the drawing boards, looking at how the first rollout was, how they weren't able to pass the second thing, what they were able to pass. And then at the end of the day, when they didn't honor their own rules and regulations of how they passed it and they violated all that, what makes you think that they're not going to violate all of it when they roll out the next one and still steamroll over that stuff? Because by the time people realize that what they did was not constitutional, that they didn't have right, at the end of the day, I find that by the time people found out that they already gave up their right, but they had rights because nobody told them about it.
So what were some of those things that were passed in this? So now we see originally again, I'm kind of giving information that I'm aware of. The WHO was originally going to try to get this one treaty together, and they were going to try to get it all done at one time. Vaccine passports, sovereignty, all of that. They realized because of the amount of people that are showing up, being aware, and individual countries are hearing from groups like yours and other groups around the world like that. They're like, hey, we're not going to be able to get this all at once. This is, it's on people's radars. How can we do it in stages? So the next stages is vaccine passports. They get, or maybe possibly sovereignty. What was in this stage that they got past that should scare people that that was in this first stage?
Well, I know they passed a watered down version. I don't know all the details. That's a better interview with Dr. Andrea Nazarenko, because she's the one that's worked closely with attorneys in our group.
Okay.
Or the attorneys, because they would know exactly. And I don't want to misquote something we could go down a rabbit hole. And I'd like to be concise about.
Okay,
what the
perfect.
are. So I would recommend reaching out to Andrea, and then because the lawyers were instrumental in getting the information to these people coming in, because most people are completely naive. They're coming off a plane going, oh, I got a free trip tonight to Geneva. Oh, I'm put up in a nice hotel. They're going to take care of me. I just got to go in and sign this agreement. Of course, it's for health. Well, wait a minute. Who handed me this thing in my hotel room? How did they know I was staying here? I got to read this. Notice, you've been put on notice, right? So that scared the shit out of the people that were like, whoa, wait, hey, I got this package. Oh, I got a package too. Oh, I got a package too. Oh, shit, where these packages come from? Who is this organization? And they brought us up into their meetings because we were so disruptive, but the disruptive part of it was just showing and shedding light on the truth, educating people. And so this event, like you said, is not political. I don't care if you're voting for Kamala, fine. I don't care if you're voting for Kennedy, great. I don't care if you're voting for Trump, great. I promise you, like we talked earlier, if you put us all in a room and we all sat and broke bread and had drinks and talked, you know what? You'd be surprised on how much common ground we have. And honestly, at the end of the day, you'd be like, wait a minute, that guy's not such a piece of shit. He's been fed a whole line of propaganda. Of course he's going to believe that. But wait a minute, I was also woken up to the fact that I've been fed a bunch of shit too from my camp. And so, hey, we come together. We're sitting inside church, right?
Yeah, I say this on my show all the time, Steve. I say this on my show all the time. If people would stop allowing themselves to be divided on the narratives and ideologies, we would find that 80% of us get along and all kind of want the same thing and would unite, and we would get an elected body, if you will, that actually votes the way we want to see fit. They would vote freedom. They would vote liberty. They would vote fiscally responsible legislation. And now we're divided up, and we're what, $35 trillion in debt. And we all hate each other because my neighbor's voting for Kamal or this one. And I always say, people, when I like to do lots of interviews with lots of different people, I always say, look, I don't care whether you're voting for Kamal. As a matter of fact, I'll interview somebody on the left anytime, any day of the week. And well, that's why you promote them. I'm not promoting them. If you don't like what they say, at least they got to say it and hear it, whether it's on my platform or not. Somebody on the right the same way. I've got friends that say, well, why'd you invite that person? That sounded crazy. I'm like, hey, you know what? When you let everybody get their information out, we start to find that while that person might seem crazy, that person's a conspiracy theorist, we all end up having a lot of the same beliefs, same fears, same concerns, and want the same thing in life. And the people win, but most importantly, freedom wins. Where do you think freedom is most under attack in America?
I think it starts at the schools. I think that a lot of the programming is changing the way that our youth believe. I think a lot of the stuff that's being played through the algorithms, through these social media stuff, it's rewiring people's brains. If you look at the next generation, I'm fearful for the next generations. I'm the person who's battling right now so that my kids don't have to. And the way that I want to battle it is I want to have that conversation, because when the conversation stops, our kids are at war, right? That's the sad thing about it. I'd rather the battle and the war come on my watch, right? Because I feel like I have that something to do with it, so my kids don't have to deal with it. And that's the challenge. I find that in America today, people have gotten so complacent, disinterested, not my problem. What can I do? And I'm like, man, if you want to sit back, your kids are going to deal with it. If you don't stand up now, your kids are going to have to stand up. And if that's the type of parent you are, man, shame on you.
I love that answer. And more, and I'm gonna ask you, I've been asking a lot of guests, where do you think that how do you think that Trump can increase his base? Right now, I think that there's people who, love him, hate him, whatever the case may be. And I don't see this question as necessarily supporting Trump as much as I see it supporting the movement behind Trump, which is a pro-America, pro-freedom movement. And how do you think that Trump can increase his base in America? But I'm also going to ask you after that another question, because you give me information that there's somebody else that you like. But how do you think Trump can increase his base?
If you ask me, I feel that Trump can increase his base by actually you go a long way with being humble. You go a long way with reaching out to the other side. Talking negative. If you ask me, look, America is tired of it from both sides. That rhetoric on both sides. People like, dude, enough. You have 2 children, right?
Right. You have baseball practice. You got to make the mac and cheese.
Yeah. And the other part of it is stop playing the right, wrong game. You're going to be wrong, so I can be right. Not playing that game. Simply keep it information. Here's the information, right? It's not good. It's not bad. It's not right. It's not left. It's simply information, right? Here's what we did. Here's the mistakes we made. Here's where we go. Clear, concise path. And embrace the people's diversity and the other parts of it. You have to include other cultures. Look, spiritually, Christian, but I love the Muslim community. I don't have a problem with it. I have a problem with the radicals. We're all loving human beings. We all want the best for our families and for our kids. I truly feel that there's a greater good in America than there is that isn't. And so if to increase the base, if you're asking me for Trump, would be he's got to walk a different path. Going, hey, I'm aligning myself with Christians. Great, right? But you have to change a whole different tune. There's got to be a whole different tune of reach in America, right? People are tired. And the
Right.
other part of it is his alignment with big pharma and big ag and big oil. Huh. What about what's right for our kids? What's right? What about the chronic disease in America? Why are Americans the fattest, most obese, most sickly people on the planet? What is in our food? Hundreds of substances are banned in Europe that are in our food. Europe's pushing harder against not allowing Monsanto's or GMOs into their country. And we do it because it's the money. And we've
You know
sold out all the different agencies like the CDC, the FDA, all those different, the FEMA program. I don't even want to get into that because I know these things firsthand. I see how poorly run, how pathetic it's run, right? And how it's a special club and it's controlled.
And what's interesting? I've heard liberals, further left leaning people brag about how other countries have such a better healthcare because they have socialized medicine. America's healthcare is horrible because it's about capitalism and this and that and the thing. And while it can be argued, our healthcare system can be argued. I get it. It could be improved from where it is, and the mandates, of course, that go along with it. But the reason why our healthcare system is better in Europe and in socialist countries, I'll say, or that we have socialized medicine, isn't because it's socialism. It's because they don't allow all the chemicals in their food. They eat better food over there, so they're naturally healthy, and they have a head start before they even have to go into the healthcare system.
But isn't that interesting, right? So the government has to fund it. So they're going to make sure that these things don't get their people sick so they don't have to keep funding as much money, right?
Right, exactly.
So again, the thing about it is I don't have an issue with like healthcare in America in the sense of, you get to choose your doctor, better doctor, so on and so forth. I have the whole system, the insurance process behind it. And how that money machine has become such a money machine of keeping people sick and having constant patients stream through there. That's the problem. And if a person gets in there and changes it, and the reality is that Trump did nothing there as far as I'm concerned. A person who understands that medical side of it and healthy America is Kennedy. And those are facts, right?
I listened to. Go ahead.
So when I look at how things have to be overhauled, they have to be completely overhauled, and every department has to be overhauled.
I listened to an interview with RFK, and I don't know if you know Kent Emmons, and they did an interview. And I listened to that, and that was very eye opening for me when I heard all the information that Kennedy has about the pharmaceutical companies and everything. But for people who don't believe that there is some problems in there, and I'll just leave it at that. I'm on your side. I agree with you on everything, but I'm simplifying it for time reasons. I saw a commercial about a few months ago that was very eye opening for me, and I did not write down the name of the pharmaceutical company or the drug, but I will not forget the commercial. It said, we have the cure, the vaccine, or whatever it was for this ailment and whatever it was. And they said some people, when they take this medicine, they will have certain side effects that are worse than the ailment. But if you have those side effects, we also have a medication to fix the ailments. And I said, that's it in a nutshell. Here they are admitting it in a commercial, on what's going on. They create the problem, but they have the solution for the problem at the same time. So it's interesting to me that you see that we have proof of it, that it's going on right before us. But when people like you pointed out, you're often called conspiracy theorist. And so I just thank you for putting yourself out there.
Yeah, and I think the thing that people need to do is go listen to every candidate, right? People are like, well, I wouldn't listen. No, don't listen to their talking points. Listen to the left wing media, listen to the right, listen to the middle, listen to it all. Take all the information in, right? I mean, when I'm at the borders and I'm dealing with apprehensions, I'm dealing with people that are coming across that are actually looking for a better life. And I'm 100% for it. I think it's great, right? I like controlled, managed immigration. The immigration system we had before was broken. Letting people in is broken. You don't do that either, right? But then I see a lot of the rape trees, the prayer rugs that are throughout the desert. And I'm like, okay, who's vetting who? Right? Who's vetting the child traffickers and who's vetting all the different countries that are coming in? Not against Muslims, but then I'm against the radicals, right? Let's see who this person is and what their interest is. We shouldn't just allow people to just come in. Look, with 1,000 of my guys on my security team, I could take LA County and bring it to its knees in a day. When you have over 200,000 that are easily documented, that are military trained and specific camps, and a war were to break out, and we're going to go fight a war in Iran or China, you don't think that we're going to get hit multiple? When our house is on fire, we're not putting somebody else's house fire out.
Exactly right.
So Americans need to pay attention of every part of what's going on in the world today.
Well,
I watch Russian TV, right? I listen to Serbian news. I watch Al Jazeera, right? Why? Because I want to get everybody's that doesn't have a skin in the game, what everyone's different perspective, and where is the temperature of the world going on, and what's really popping off. And then in that information stuff, you can find that fine line of what the truth is.
Steve, we're going to wrap up here. And I was going to ask you one of my final questions, which is, do you have any final words? But I got to tell you, in the last, almost this entire conversation that we've had, almost this entire podcast, especially 3 or 4 times in the last 30 minutes, you've had some great, couple minute segments of very powerful things that are almost walkaways that you've said that were just absolutely amazing and great ways to wrap up. And so while I could always end on knowing that you had so many great things that you said, I am going to ask you the last question, because you've had so many amazing ones. I can only imagine how much better your final word could be. Do you have any final words to leave the audience with today?
It's actually really simple. I have a service, right?
Wait, repeat that again. You broke up a little bit on my end. Repeat that again.
Yeah, it's just really simple. It's in service. Just be in service. Because being in service is the greatest form of love. That's it. So when people, that's all I can say is this time and age and what we're doing is show up. Yeah, show up, invite somebody from the other side, sit down, get to know your neighbor, and also prepare your home and your business, whatever it may be. Trained. Get trained. If you're doing that training, actually, matter of fact, we're doing a grid down training this weekend with 2 of my experts, one of the top experts in survival, one of my guys who just is a military contractor who just came back from overseas, field medic, incredible operator. And we're off the grid for 3 days, and I'm taking my daughter with me. Why? She's going to learn how to take down an animal, how to skin it, how to capture the blood to make blood sausage, right? How to live off the land, how to set up her own shelter, how to forage, how to go, get water, clean water, fish, all that type of stuff. So we're doing that over a 3-day weekend, and we're doing night ops, night vision, ambush, signals, all different things that we do. That's a very back-to-back real tight course. But I can tell people, get trained. And if they want more information, you can see some of the work that we've done if you go to YouTube and search strategic response partners from our different deployments, from hurricanes, wildfires, stuff that we've done at the border. If it's security stuff or they're interested in more training, we have a special type of training for what we call Protector Nation. That's at saberteam.com. But mark your calendars for September 29th in DC, and look at Rescue the West. There's some powerful, powerful speakers being announced, and it's from all sides, and it's about unifying America, and it's going to be truly a once in a lifetime event.
Steve, that's amazing. So so do you do these training courses, or does somebody else do these training courses?
No, I'm one of the trainers. Yeah, so we put
I
it
love.
together. Yeah.
I'll share with you at the time, but I've been promoting training a lot, but different kinds of training. My wife and I were carjacked about 10 weeks ago, and it was because of my training that gave me what I needed to do to be able to survive it, and not only for myself but save my wife's life because they tried to kill my wife during the carjacking. And so so I firmly believe in training. So your audio broke up a little bit, but I could kind of tell what you were saying when you talked about be of service, which I think is a powerful thing, showing up, which I think is powerful. And I love the fact that you're talking about training, because even if people think that that's that conspiratorial stuff again, oh, get training, like we're going to have like no society, right? I think that people need to be aware, because let's just say if there's in Louisiana, there's a hurricane that knocks out the power, or you're in the Midwest where there's a tornado knocks out the grid, or an earthquake, wherever you are, or in the event that I think that we have a terrorist attack. A lot of people, are aware that we have, our borders are open, but in the event of a terrorist attack from one of these individuals, or many of these individuals that are military age trained people coming across our borders, if they decide to do some sort of a widespread attack like 9/11, it could shut things down in America for days, weeks, or months. And if we aren't trained, we're it's going to be very difficult. Might as well get trained, because all it could do is help you, even in a minor situation like mine where I got carjacked.
And the one thing that, if there's only one thing that you carry with you, you should have a sat phone. Because every one of my family members has a sat phone. Every one of my team members have a sat phone. And every one of our emergency response vendors has a sat phone. We keep in a directory. And we do a quarterly call. Every number's programmed. We do it every quarter. Because if you don't have comms, comms is what controls chaos. That, and if you were to have the next best thing, obviously carry a gun and lots of ammo. So get trained.
That's right.
Have your sat phone, have your gun. You could add behind that. And don't just get a gun. That means you're armed. It's like going to Guitar Center and buying a guitar. It doesn't make you a musician. Get trained on
it. Steve, hang on one second. I really appreciate you. I can't tell you how wonderful of an interview that I am grateful for. You've got great information, and if you can hang on 1 minute, I want to let everybody else know to please share the interview. I'd be grateful to you if you share this interview with you think somebody needs to be informed about, whether it's the WHO or just how inspiring it is to bring values back to America, promote freedom, liberty, the values that make not just America great, but make families great. Because when you have values that promote families and work ethic, you improve your communities and you improve your country, not just for yourself and not just for those who share your ideologies, but for everyone. Because when we all rise together, we all prosper together, and we are able to push the elites out. We're able to push the people who are dividing us out of our lives, out of our country, in ways that make us better, and of course, freedom better. Thank you so much for today, listening to today's show. And again, please share it. Have a great day, and God bless America.
God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.